For several moments after the hidden compartment was opened, nobody moved. The room remained completely silent. It was the kind of silence that only appears when people realize they are standing in the middle of something much bigger than themselves. The old photograph frame rested on Mama B's bed while everyone stared at the contents that had been hidden behind it for so many years. A letter. A key. And another photograph. My hands trembled as I picked up the photograph. After everything we had discovered that night, I expected another clue. Another location. Another secret connected to my mother's mysterious past. Instead, the moment I looked at the picture, my entire body froze. It was me. Not the woman I had become. Not the instructor fighting to build a future. Not the young girl who had struggled through years of hardship. A baby. A tiny smiling baby wrapped in a soft pink blanket. For a second, I forgot everyone else was in the room. The world around me disappeared. I stared at the photograph as tears gathered in my eyes. This was the first picture of myself I had ever seen as a baby. The first proof that there had once been a time when life was simple. A time before secrets. Before betrayal. Before disappearances. Before powerful people decided that my existence was a problem. My fingers slowly turned the photograph over. The moment I saw the handwriting, my heart broke. It was my mother's writing. There was no doubt about it. I had already seen enough of her letters to recognize every curve and stroke of her pen. Written carefully across the back were words that instantly destroyed years of pain. The greatest gift God ever gave me. The tears came immediately. Not quiet tears. Not the kind people hide. These were tears that had been waiting for years. Years of unanswered questions. Years of loneliness. Years of wondering whether I had ever truly been loved. For most of my life, I had carried a wound nobody could see. Whenever people spoke about their mothers, I smiled and pretended it did not affect me. Whenever I saw mothers holding their children close, I looked away. Whenever people asked questions about my family, I changed the subject. Because deep inside, there was always that painful uncertainty. Did she want me? Did she love me? Was I worth fighting for? Now, holding that photograph in my hands, I finally had my answer. Not from rumors. Not from assumptions. Not from stories told by other people. From her own hand. From her own heart. I was the greatest gift God had given her. The realization hit me harder than anything else that night. Beside me, Mama B began crying openly. Bintu quickly wiped tears from her face. Ngozi lowered her head and covered her eyes. Even Papa B turned away toward the window. The old man tried to hide it, but everyone could see the tears shining in his eyes. At that moment, nobody cared about money. Nobody cared about the company. Nobody cared about inheritance. Those things suddenly felt small. Very small. Because after carrying pain for so many years, I had finally received something priceless. Proof of my mother's love. And somehow, that meant more than every property and every bank account combined. The room remained emotional for a long time before Chief Adewale finally cleared his throat. Carefully, he unfolded the second letter. Immediately, everyone became quiet again. The atmosphere changed. This felt different. The first letter had revealed secrets. This one felt personal. Almost like a conversation between a mother and a daughter separated by fate. Chief Adewale adjusted the paper and began reading. My beautiful Binta. If these words have reached you, then you survived. And if you survived, then you are stronger than anyone around you realizes. The room became completely still. Even the neighbors gathered outside the window stopped whispering. Every person listened. I wish I could see the woman you became. I wish I could hear your laughter. I wish I could tell you these things face to face. But if life has separated us, remember this. You were never born to be controlled. You were never born to live in fear. You were never born to spend your life helping other people achieve their dreams while your own dreams die quietly inside you. You were born to shine. You were born to lead. You were born to become everything they said you could never become. By the time those words were read aloud, tears were flowing freely down my cheeks. Because without knowing it, my mother was describing the very battles I had fought throughout my life. The years at the salon. The humiliation. The hunger. The disappointment. The moment when people treated me as if I would never amount to anything. Yet somehow I had survived. Not because life was kind, but because I refused to give up. The letter continued. And when the truth finally comes out, choose purpose over revenge. Choose healing over hatred. Choose wisdom over anger. Because revenge destroys people. But purpose changes lives. Nobody spoke after the final line. The silence itself felt sacred. Then slowly, Papa B rose from his chair. Age had bent his shoulders. Time had weakened his body. But the pride in his eyes was impossible to miss. He looked directly at me. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he smiled. A proud father smile. The kind every child longs to see. Binta, he said quietly. Yes, Papa. You have already become the woman she prayed for. The words hit me like a wave. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were true. For years I had focused on everything life had taken from me. The education I never completed. The opportunities one missed. The childhood I lost. The family I never knew. But standing in that room, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me, I finally saw another truth. My story was not about what had been taken. My story was about what I survived. And survival is its own kind of victory. The realization filled me with a strength I had never felt before. Then suddenly, crash! The violent sound exploded from outside the compound. Everyone jumped. The emotional moment shattered instantly. Chief Adewale rushed toward the window. The moment he looked outside, his face changed. All the warmth disappeared. All the emotion vanished. Fear returned. A dangerous kind of fear. We have a problem, he said. Immediately my heart began pounding again. The black vehicle that had been parked across the street was speeding away into the darkness. Gone. As if someone had been watching us the entire time. Listen. Waiting. One of the suited men immediately grabbed his phone. His expression turned pale. They know. The words hung heavily in the air. They know we found something. Suddenly everyone understood. The people behind my mother's death were still out there. Still watching. Still protecting their secrets. And now they knew we were getting close. Very close. But as fear tried to creep back into my heart, I looked down at the photograph in my hand. Then at the letters. Then at the key resting inside the envelope. And something inside me changed. I was no longer the frightened girl who arrived in Lagos with nothing. I was no longer the apprentice sleeping on a corridor floor. I was no longer the young woman afraid to dream. I was Binta. A survivor. A daughter. A fighter. And for the first time in my life, I was not running away from my story. I was running straight toward it. Then my eyes settled on the small key. The one hidden beside the letters. The one nobody had paid attention to until now. Chief Adewale picked it up carefully. His eyes narrowed. Then suddenly they widened. The room instantly became alert. What is it? Ngozi asked. Without speaking, he turned the key toward the light. Tiny words had been engraved into the metal. Words so small they were almost invisible. When he finally read them aloud, a collective gasp swept through the room. The inscription pointed to a forgotten locker in Lagos. Another clue. Another secret. Another chapter waiting to be opened. And somewhere in that vast city, hidden behind a locked door untouched for years, something had been waiting patiently. Waiting through betrayal. Waiting through lies. Waiting through death. Waiting for me. And deep inside, I knew one thing. Whatever was inside that locker would either reveal the complete truth about my mother's death, or place every one of us in more danger than ever before. The moment Chief Adewale finished reading the inscription on the key, a heavy silence settled over the room. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. It was as if everyone was trying to understand the same frightening reality at once. For years, the truth had existed only as rumors, suspicions, and unanswered questions. Now the truth had a direction, a location, a destination. Somewhere in Lagos, hidden behind a forgotten lacquer door, was something my mother had considered important enough to protect with her life. And judging by the fear on the faces around me, everyone understood that whatever was waiting inside that locker was not ordinary. Papa B slowly lowered himself back into his chair. The old man looked exhausted. The events of the night had taken a visible toll on him. Yet despite his tiredness, there was determination in his eyes. The same determination I had seen when he sold his belongings to help me attend training school. The same determination that had pushed him to fight for me when nobody else would. He looked at the key resting in Chief Adewale's hand. Then he sighed deeply. "My daughter," he said quietly, "this matter has become bigger than all of us." Nobody disagreed. Because deep down, we all knew it was true. The missing pages. The hidden photograph. The mysterious church. The black vehicle watching from outside. The locker in Lagos. Everything pointed toward a secret powerful people had spent years trying to bury. And powerful people rarely protected small secrets. They protected dangerous ones. Outside, the night had grown darker. The compound that had been filled with voices earlier now felt strangely tense. Even the neighbors who had gathered near the fence were speaking in whispers. Word had already begun spreading through the area. That was one thing about Nigerian communities. Before sunrise, everybody would know something had happened. Maybe not the details. But they would know. They always knew. Mama B wiped her eyes with the edge of her wrapper and looked toward Chief Adewale. "What do we do now?" The question hung in the air. Everybody waited for an answer. But before Chief Adewale could speak, Ngozi shook her head firmly. "We cannot wait." Her voice carried a seriousness that immediately drew everyone's attention. "We have already waited too long." Chief Adewale frowned. "Ngozi." "No," she interrupted. "For years I stayed silent because I was afraid." The room became quiet. Nobody interrupted her. For the first time since arriving, she seemed ready to release the burden she had carried for so long. "I told myself I was protecting my family." She swallowed hard. "I told myself staying quiet was the safest option." Tears gathered in her eyes. But every year that passed, more people disappeared. Nobody spoke. Because everyone knew she was telling the truth. Witnesses vanished. Records vanished. Evidence vanished. Even memories seemed to disappear. The people responsible had spent years cleaning up every trace they could find. And they had nearly succeeded. Ngozi pointed toward the key. "Whatever is inside that locker may be the last piece of evidence left." The word sent a chill through me. The last piece. The possibility suddenly felt very real. What if everything depended on what was hidden there? What if the locker contained the proof my mother had died trying to protect? What if it contained the names of the people responsible? What if it explained why I had been taken away? What if it explained why certain people had spent years pretending I never existed? The questions raced through my mind. One after another. Faster and faster. Then suddenly another thought struck me. a frightening thought. What if we were already too late? The same fear must have crossed Chief Adewole's mind, because his expression immediately darkened. If they were listening tonight, he said slowly, then they may already know about the locker. The room instantly became uneasy. Nobody wanted to admit it. But he was right. The people behind all this were not fools. If they had been watching the compound, then they had probably heard enough to understand what we had discovered. And if they understood, they would act. Fast. Very fast. A wealthy man could replace money. A powerful man could replace influence. But evidence. Evidence was different. Evidence could destroy everything. Suddenly Bintu stood up. The movement surprised everyone. She looked nervous, but determined. We need to leave before morning. All eyes turned toward her. She rarely interrupted conversations involving elders. Yet this time nobody corrected her. Because she was speaking sense. The longer we stay here talking, she continued, the more time they have. The room fell silent again. Then, surprisingly, Papa B nodded. She is right. Chief Adewole looked thoughtful. Very thoughtful. Then he slowly turned toward me. His eyes locked onto mine. Binta. My heart immediately started beating faster. Yes. If we go to Lagos, there is no turning back. The room became quiet again. I understood exactly what he meant. This was no longer about inheritance. No longer about property. No longer about discovering family history. This had become something else entirely. A fight for truth. And once we stepped into that fight, there would be consequences. Powerful people would not sit quietly and watch their secrets collapse. They would fight back. They would protect themselves. And they would not care who got hurt. For several moments, I said nothing. I thought about my mother. I thought about the photograph. The letters. The years of silence. The years of pain. The years of wondering. Then I thought about the words she had written. You were born to lead. You were born to shine. You were born to live without fear. Slowly, I lifted my head. My voice was calm. Stronger than I expected. We are going. Nobody spoke. But I saw the reactions immediately. Pride in Papa B's eyes. Relief in Ngozi's face. Determination on Chief Adewole's expression. For the first time all night, everyone seemed united. The decision had been made. We would go to Lagos. We would find the locker. And we would discover what my mother had protected for all those years. What none of us knew was that several kilometers away, inside a luxurious mansion hidden behind high walls and armed security, another meeting was taking place. A phone rested on a polished wooden desk. A man sat in darkness listening carefully as a voice reported everything that had happened inside the compound. The discovery of the photograph. The letters. The key. The locker. When the report ended, silence filled the room. Then the man slowly stood. His face remained hidden in shadow. But his voice was cold. Dangerously cold. So after all these years, he walked toward the window. The girl is still alive. Outside, expensive cars lined the driveway. Security guards patrolled the compound. The kind of wealth that could buy almost anything. The kind of power that could make problems disappear. The man stared into the darkness. Then he spoke again. Prepare the team. The person on the phone hesitated. Sir. His voice hardened. They must not reach that locker. The call ended. And for the first time in many years, genuine fear entered the heart of a man who believed himself untouchable. Because somewhere deep inside, he knew the truth. If Binta reached that locker before he did, everything he had built could come crashing down. And by sunrise, the race for the truth would begin. Sleep did not visit anyone in Papa B's house that night. How could it? Too much had happened. Too many secrets had been uncovered. Too many questions were demanding answers. The compound that was usually peaceful after nightfall remained awake long into the early hours of the morning. Inside the sitting room, the old ceiling fan rotated lazily above our heads while everyone sat in small groups discussing the discoveries of the night. Nobody trusted sleep. Not anymore. Not when we had just learned that unknown people were watching us. Not when a mysterious black vehicle had disappeared into the darkness moments after we found the hidden compartment. Not when the truth seemed closer than it had ever been. I sat quietly on a wooden chair near the window, holding my mother's photograph against my chest. The baby in the picture smiled innocently, completely unaware of the storm that would one day surround her life. I studied the image again. And again. And again. Every time I looked at it, the same thought entered my mind. My mother really loved me. The realization still felt strange. Beautiful. But strange. For years, I had built emotional walls around myself. Walls created by disappointment. Walls created by abandonment. Walls created by pain. Now those walls were beginning to crack. And behind them was a little girl who had spent her entire life longing for answers. A little girl who had finally received one. Across the room, Mama B sat quietly with Ngozi. The two women spoke in hushed voices. Occasionally they would wipe their eyes. Occasionally they would fall silent and stare into space. Years of memories had suddenly returned. Memories they had spent decades trying to bury. Meanwhile, Chief Adewale remained focused on the letters. He had read them so many times that he practically knew every word by heart. Yet he continued studying them. Searching for details. Searching for clues. Searching for something everyone else might have missed. The man looked less like a businessman now and more like a detective chasing the biggest mystery of his life. Just before dawn, he suddenly looked up. His expression had changed. There is something strange. Immediately everyone became alert. What is it? Ngozi asked. Chief Adewale tapped the letter gently. The church. The room became silent. Everyone remembered the church. The church mentioned on the missing page. The church connected somehow to the hidden photograph. The church keeps appearing, he continued. First in the missing page. He raised one finger. Then in Mama B's memory. Another finger. Then in the photograph. A third finger. He looked around the room. My instinct tells me the church is more important than we think. The word settled heavily over everyone. Because deep down, many of us felt the same way. My mother had not been careless. Every clue she left behind had meaning. Every detail had purpose. Nothing was random. Papa B nodded thoughtfully. You think the church is connected to the locker? Chief Adewale leaned back. I think the church is connected to everything. The room became quiet again. Outside, the first sounds of morning were beginning to emerge. Roosters crowed somewhere in the distance. Motorcycles passed along the road. Market women prepared for another day. Life was waking up. But inside the house, none of us felt normal anymore. We were standing on the edge of something dangerous. Something life-changing. And everybody knew it. As daylight slowly entered the room, preparations began. The plan was simple. Travel to Lagos. Locate the locker. Discover what was hidden inside before anyone else reached it. Simple in theory. Dangerous in reality. Very dangerous. Bintu helped Mama B prepare food for the journey. Ngozi gathered the letters and carefully placed them inside a waterproof folder. Chief Adewale spent almost an hour making phone calls. Some calls were answered. Others were not. His expression became darker after each conversation. Finally, I approached him. "What is wrong?" He hesitated. Then sighed. "People are refusing to talk." My stomach tightened. "What people?" "The same people who used to help investigate your mother's case." That immediately worried me. Chief Adewale was not a man who frightened easily. If he looked concerned, there was a reason. "They are scared," he continued. "Or someone has warned them." The word sent a chill through my body. Someone has warned them. That could only mean one thing. News was spreading. Fast. Far too fast. Whoever had been watching us last night was already making moves. The race had truly begun. A few hours later, a dark SUV pulled into the compound. Everyone stepped outside. The vehicle belonged to Chief Adewale. Large. Comfortable. Strong enough for a long journey. As we loaded our belongings into the back, neighbors gathered outside their houses pretending not to watch. But they watched. In every Nigerian street, news traveled faster than the internet. People already knew something unusual was happening. They just did not know what. Mama B hugged several neighbors before leaving. Papa B exchanged greetings with elderly men standing nearby. The atmosphere felt strangely emotional. As if everyone sensed that an important chapter was ending. Before entering the vehicle, I turned and looked at the compound. The same compound that had become my refuge. The same compound where I had learned the truth about my mother. The same compound where my life had changed forever. A strange feeling settled inside me. Something between gratitude and sadness. Because deep down, I knew I would never be the same person who arrived there. Too much had happened. Too much had changed. "Binta." I turned. It was Papa B. The old man smiled gently. "Come." I nodded and entered the vehicle. The doors closed. The engine started. And slowly, we pulled away from the compound. None of us noticed the motorcycle parked beneath a nearby tree. The rider wore a helmet, dark glasses, and an expressionless face. The moment our vehicle disappeared onto the main road, he removed the phone from his pocket. He dialed a number. The call connected almost immediately. "They have left." A brief silence followed. Then a cold voice answered. "Good." The rider adjusted his helmet. "They are heading toward Lagos." Another pause. Then the voice spoke again. "Do not lose them." The line went dead. The rider started his motorcycle. A moment later, he pulled onto the road, following us from a safe distance. Watching. Waiting. Tracking our every movement. And inside our vehicle, completely unaware of the danger behind us, we continued our journey toward Lagos. Toward the locker. Toward the truth. Toward a secret powerful men had killed to protect. A secret that was finally beginning to rise from the grave. The journey to Lagos felt longer than it should have. Not because of the distance, but because of the tension sitting inside the vehicle. Nobody was truly relaxed. Nobody was truly comfortable. Every person carried their own thoughts, their own fears, their own expectations. As the SUV sped along the highway, villages gave way to towns, and towns slowly gave way to bustling cities filled with the familiar sounds of Nigeria waking up to another day. Roadside traders displayed fruits and snacks. Commercial buses raced recklessly from one lane to another. Fuel stations overflowed with customers. Hawkers moved between vehicles whenever traffic slowed. Life continued as normal for everyone else. But for us, nothing felt normal anymore. I sat beside the window watching the scenery pass. The photograph of my baby self remained safely tucked inside my bag. Every now and then, I touched the bag just to reassure myself it was still there. It was strange. Out of everything we had discovered, that photograph affected me the most. Not the company. Not the inheritance. Not even the evidence. The photograph. Because it represented something I had spent my entire life searching for. Proof that I was loved. Proof that I mattered. Proof that I had never been forgotten. As the vehicle continued forward, my thoughts drifted back to my mother. I wondered what she had been like. Not the version described by documents and investigations. The real woman. The woman who laughed. The woman who cried. The woman who dreamed about her future. The woman who held me in her arms and called me her greatest gift. Suddenly, I realized something painful. For years, I had been trying to solve the mystery of her death. But I still knew very little about her life. The realization made me turn toward Ngozi. She sat quietly near the back of the vehicle. Lost in thought. Ngozi. She looked up. Yes, my daughter. The word still felt strange whenever she called me that. Not because she was claiming to be my mother. But because there was genuine affection in her voice. The affection of someone who had loved my mother deeply. What was she like? Immediately, the vehicle became quiet. Everyone knew exactly who I meant. Ngozi smiled softly. A sad smile. The smile of someone remembering a person they miss dearly. Your mother. I nodded. For a moment she stared out the window. Then she laughed quietly. The sound surprised everyone. Because it was the first genuine laugh we had heard from her since she arrived. Your mother was trouble. The vehicle erupted with laughter. Even Chief Adewale smiled. Trouble? I asked. Ngozi nodded. Serious trouble. The laughter continued. She was stubborn. More laughter. Very stubborn. Like Binta, Bintu added immediately. The entire vehicle laughed again. Even I could not help smiling. Ngozi pointed at me. Exactly like Binta. The laughter gradually faded. Then her expression softened. But she had a good heart. The vehicle became quiet again. Your mother could never ignore suffering. Ngozi's voice carried warmth now. If she saw someone hungry, she would feed them. If she saw someone crying, she would sit beside them until they smiled. If she saw injustice, she would fight it. She shook her head. Sometimes she fought battles that were not even her own. I listened carefully, trying to memorize every word. Every detail felt precious. Like finding pieces of a puzzle I had been searching for my entire life. Ngozi smiled again. There was a time she spent nearly a month helping an old widow recover property that had been stolen from her. Papa B nodded. That sounds like her. Ngozi laughed. Meanwhile her own problems were waiting at home. The vehicle filled with gentle laughter once more. For the first time since leaving the compound, the atmosphere felt lighter. Warmer. Almost normal. Almost. Then Chief Adewale's phone rang. The change was immediate. The laughter disappeared. The tension returned. Chief Adewale glanced at the screen. His expression hardened. Slowly, he answered. Hello. Nobody spoke. Everyone listened. The conversation was brief. Very brief. But whatever was said caused the color to drain from his face. When he ended the call, the vehicle became silent. My stomach tightened. What happened? Chief Adewale hesitated. Then looked directly at me. Someone broke into my office last night. The words landed like a stone. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The silence became heavy. Very heavy. What? Ngozi finally whispered. Chief Adewale nodded slowly. My office. His jaw tightened. They searched everything. A chill traveled through my body. The timing could not be a coincidence. Not after everything that had happened. Not after the discovery of the letters. Not after the black vehicle. Not after the decision to travel. They were looking for something, he continued. Or someone. Papa B frowned. Did they find anything? Chief Adewale shook his head. No. A sigh of relief spread through the vehicle. But it was short-lived. Because his next words were even worse. They left a message. The silence returned instantly. A dangerous silence. What message? I asked. Chief Adewale looked away. As if he hated repeating the words. Then finally he spoke. They wrote it on my office wall. Nobody breathed. The vehicle seemed frozen. What did it say? For several seconds he said nothing. Then he answered quietly. Some graves should remain closed. The word sent fear through every person inside the vehicle. Because the message was not a warning. It was a threat. A very clear threat. Someone knew we were getting closer. Someone was watching. Someone was afraid. And desperate people often did dangerous things. Outside, the highway stretched endlessly ahead. The road to Lagos continued. But now the journey felt different. The danger was no longer hidden. No longer distant. It was real. Very real. Yet strangely, instead of discouraging me, the threat had the opposite effect. Because if powerful people were willing to break into offices and issue warnings, then it meant one thing. We were close. Closer than ever. Close enough to make them nervous. Close enough to make them react. Close enough to uncover the truth. I looked out the window again. The road stretched toward the horizon. Somewhere ahead was Lagos. Somewhere ahead was the locker. And somewhere ahead was the secret that had haunted lives for decades. What none of us knew was that danger had already reached Lagos before us. Inside a crowded transport terminal, a tall man wearing a brown cap stood beside a row of old storage lockers. His phone vibrated. He answered immediately. Have they left? A voice replied from the other end. They are on their way. The man looked toward the locker area. Then his eyes settled on one particular locker. A locker that had remained untouched for years. A locker carrying a number he knew very well. Slowly, a cold smile appeared on his face. They are too late. He ended the call. Then reached into his pocket. And removed a duplicate key. The moment the man pulled out the duplicate key, he glanced around carefully. The transport terminal was already alive with activity. Passengers dragged heavy bags across the floor. Vendors shouted the prices of snacks and bottled drinks. Conductors called out destinations in loud voices. Security officers moved about casually, paying little attention to the crowd. It was the perfect place to disappear. The perfect place to carry out a task without attracting attention. The man adjusted his brown cap and walked calmly toward the row of storage lockers. His movements were steady. Confident. Practiced. This was not his first time. And judging by the calmness in his eyes, he believed it would be his last. He stopped in front of locker 27. For a moment, he simply stared at it. A small smile appeared on his lips. So this is where you hid it. He slipped the key into the lock. Then paused. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. The smile slowly disappeared. His instincts were warning him. Years of doing dangerous work had taught him to trust those instincts. Slowly, he stepped back. His eyes scanned the area. Nothing seemed unusual. People moved normally. Nobody appeared interested in him. Nobody appeared suspicious. Yet the uneasy feeling remained. Suddenly, his phone vibrated. The man answered immediately. What is it? The voice on the other end sounded urgent. Leave there now. His expression darkened. Why? They are not as far behind as we thought. The man frowned. How close? A brief silence followed. Then the answer came. Very close. The line went dead. The man stared at the locker again. His jaw tightened. He clearly wanted to open it. Wanted to finish the job. Wanted to know what had been hidden inside for all these years. But experience had taught him something important. A living man could always return. A dead man could not. Reluctantly, he turned away. Moments later, he disappeared into the crowd. Unaware that fate had just given us another chance. Several hours later, our SUV finally entered Lagos. The city greeted us exactly as Lagos always did. With noise. With movement. With energy. With chaos. Traffic stretched endlessly ahead. Commercial buses fought for every available space. Street hawkers moved confidently between vehicles. Motorcycles darted through impossible gaps. The air carried the familiar mixture of ambition, struggle, and determination that defined Nigeria's largest city. For many people, Lagos was intimidating. For others, it represented opportunity. For me, it felt like a battlefield. Because somewhere inside this massive city was a secret people had spent years protecting. And we were coming for it. As we crawled through traffic, Chief Adewale checked his watch repeatedly. The man hated delays. Especially today. Every minute felt important. Every minute felt dangerous. Finally, after what felt like forever, we reached the transport terminal. The moment the vehicle stopped, everyone became alert. No more casual conversations. No more laughter. No more stories. This was it. The moment we had traveled all this way for. I looked toward the building. From the outside, it appeared completely ordinary. Nothing about it suggested it contained secrets capable of destroying powerful people. Nothing about it suggested lives had been lost protecting whatever was hidden inside. Yet appearances could be deceiving. Very deceiving. We stepped out of the vehicle together. Chief Adewale took the lead. Ngozi walked beside him. Papa B remained close to me despite his age. Bintu followed nervously. The suited men spread out slightly, scanning the area. Their behavior immediately caught my attention. They were no longer acting like company representatives. They were acting like bodyguards. As though they expected trouble. Perhaps they did. The closer we got to the locker area, the faster my heart beat. The key felt heavy inside my pocket. Almost as if it carried the weight of every unanswered question. Every hidden truth. Every lost year. Finally, we reached the row of lockers. My eyes moved from one number to another. 21. 22. 23. Each step increased the tension. 24. 25. 26. Then we saw it. Locker 27. For a moment, nobody moved. The locker stood quietly among the others. Ordinary. Unremarkable. Yet somehow it seemed to radiate significance. This simple metal door had survived decades. Decades of secrets. Decades of lies. Decades of fear. And now, finally, we stood before it. I slowly removed the key from my pocket. The group gathered closer. Nobody spoke. The terminal noises seemed to fade away. The world narrowed to a single object. A single lock. A single moment. My hands trembled slightly as I inserted the key. It fit perfectly. A collective breath swept through the group. I looked toward Chief Adewale. He nodded. Go ahead. I swallowed hard. Then slowly turned the key. Click. The sound echoed in my ears. The lock opened. Nobody breathed. Slowly, I pulled the door open. The metal creaked softly. The opening widened. Then widened further. And suddenly we could see inside. For several seconds, nobody understood what they were looking at. Because instead of documents, instead of cash, instead of company records, the locker contained a single old wooden box. Nothing else. Just one box. Dust covered. Weathered by time. Waiting patiently in darkness. Ngozi immediately covered her mouth. Her eyes widened with recognition. Oh God. My heart pounded. What is it? She stared at the box. Then tears began forming in her eyes. I know that box. The words instantly sent shock through the group. What do you mean? Chief Adewale asked. Ngozi took a step forward. Slowly. Carefully. As though approaching a ghost. Then she whispered the words that made my blood run cold. That box belonged to your grandfather. Silence. Absolute silence. My grandfather. The man nobody talked about. The man whose name had appeared only occasionally in family stories. The man who seemed connected somehow to everything. The realization settled over everyone at once. Whatever was inside that box had not started with my mother. The secret was older. Much older. And as I reached forward to lift the lid, none of us noticed the man watching from the upper floor of the terminal. The same man in the brown cap. The same man who had almost opened the locker earlier. Hidden behind a pillar, he quietly raised his phone. And with a calm voice, he said only one sentence. They found the box. Then he listened. And whatever answer came from the other end caused even him to go pale.